everybody. How's it going? This is Eden Mabon of LightCycleAstrology.com. Today we are looking at Mercury's entrance into the sign of Pisces, which is happening tomorrow, Thursday, March the 2nd. Before we get into the video today, please like, share, and subscribe on the video if you like it and on the channel. It really helps the algorithm pick up the channel and grow it, and I so do appreciate that support. Also, this channel is funded by my consultation practice at LightCycleAstrology.com. We are looking for new clients for 2023, so if you're interested in a consultation, please go to LightCycleAstrology.com. Send me a message, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Okay, as we always do, let's go ahead and pull up the real-time clock now and get a look at the timing of Mercury's ingression into Pisces and begin to unpack some of the things that are transpiring over the next couple of weeks. There are a lot of points to hit upon here because we are really getting a big Mercury story coming up. So one thing that we see is that Mercury has just gone by this conjunction to Saturn. Saturn, who is at the very, very last half degree of Aquarius, about to make an imminent sign change into Pisces and lose dignity. So Mercury travels by Saturn and then moves into Pisces. And Mercury does this while being under the beams of the sun, meaning that Mercury is no longer visible as a star in the sky because it's just too close to the bright light that is shed from the sun. So this symbolically represents Mercury going through a death and a rebirth. The death happens before Mercury comes to make a conjunction with the sun, and then Mercury is reborn on the other side of the sun. A new Mercury-Sun synodic cycle begins. This is like a reset for Mercury. And eventually Mercury will emerge in the sky and become visible again as the evening star. But that's just part of the story, because Mercury is doing this synodic reset with the sun in this sign of Pisces that is essentially antithetical to Mercury kinds of nature. What do I mean by that? Well, if you've been learning ancient astrology or watching the channel, or if you're consuming other ancient astrological content, you'll know that there is a whole dignity scheme at work here with all of the planets, meaning that the ancient astrologers designated planets to have certain dignity, where they're either kind of looked at as having places that are, they seem to be happy or powerful or potent in a good way, and then other places that are opposite to that. Well, we see Mercury moving into a sign that is opposite to one of Mercury's temples. Mercury is a planet that was said to be the domicile ruler of Gemini and Virgo. But what's really fascinating with Mercury is the only planet that shares a place for its one of its domiciles and the place that he is also said to be exalted. Every other planet has a separate place for this. So, for instance, Jupiter is said to be in domicile in Sagittarius and in Pisces, but neither of those places is where Jupiter is said to be exalted. Jupiter is said to be exalted in the sign of Cancer. And there is all kinds of rationalities for these different designations, but what we're getting at here is that Mercury has this unique distinction as being a planet that finds itself, when it goes through Virgo, of not only being at home in one of its own temples, but also being exalted and lifted up. A very interesting designation. Now, the other side of the shoe drops, is that the expression? But the other side of that coin is flipped over when Mercury moves into Pisces, being opposite to Virgo, because now there's a double whammy of sort of negative dignity, where we see that Mercury is not only in what is known as detriment or contrary, meaning it is as far away from one of its own natural places as it could possibly be, but it's also in a place that is the opposite of being exalted, which is depressed or fallen. So what a powerful, powerful moment for Mercury to go through this huge transition falling under the beams of the sun, coming off a conjunction to malefic Saturn, as Saturn is about ready to lose all strength in his own dignity and change signs himself. And then as we go forward, this is what's really, really fascinating is, let me get rid of this line here. What's really fascinating is as we see things go forward over the next couple of weeks here, we watch Mercury get closer and closer and closer to the sun. And this is this process of Mercury becoming more and more damaged, you could say, or burnt up, as some people call it. And right around, we're going to be coming up to about March 16th, where we see that Mercury and the sun are pretty much in the same degree or about to be in the same degree. By the 17th, Mercury passes over the sun. So that's the Cazimi moment. That's the moment that we call the reset of the synodic cycle between Mercury and the sun, where Mercury transitions from being a morning star to an evening star. It's a metaphorical death and rebirth for Mercury. But what's so incredible about this particular reset, because this happens all over, 3 to 4 times a year, all over the zodiac, right? It can happen in any sign, whatever sign the sun is in. But in this particular sign, this is really fascinating because, again, it's happening in such a powerful place for Mercury, in the negative, you might say. And also, it's making a simultaneous conjunction to Neptune. Both the sun and Mercury are in this trine conjunction or adherence all at once. And then this whole stellium of planets is making a dominant square to Mars. Wow. That's all coming up on March 16th. So I want to bring up the exact timeline for this, just so you actually, hold on, I'll keep this up for you, but I'm going to pull up my notes here. The exact timeline for this is really, really fascinating. So this is something we're going to keep an eye on as things go on. We'll make content about this as each one of these things sort of gets closer. But basically, the story unfolds like this ahead. On Tuesday, March the 7th, at exactly 7:20 a.m. Eastern Time, Mars moves into an engagement range to Neptune by square. So there's a whole progression of planetary engagements that we're about to see happen. But the first thing is that Mars and Neptune begin to engage each other by a square. Okay. And this is also the moment of the Virgo full moon. So that's pretty powerful. So that's coming up on March the 7th, just a few days after Mercury ingresses into Pisces. Now, by that Saturday, March 11th, by 1 a.m. Eastern Time, the sun moves into engagement range with Mars by square. So first you have Mars and Neptune moving into the square. Then the sun catches up and moves also into that square. Now, by Sunday, the next day, March the 12th at 3:40 p.m. Eastern Time, the sun moves into an engagement range to conjunct Neptune. So now we have the sun and Neptune making an adherence or a conjunction with each other. Both of them are already in a square to Mars. By Monday, March the 14th at 1 a.m., Mercury now moves into an engagement range to conjunct Neptune. Okay, so these are very just specific things that are unfolding as time goes on here. All right, and then 17 hours after Mercury moves into the engagement range to conjoin with Neptune, at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Mars perfects its square to Neptune. Thursday, March 16th at 12:12 a.m. Eastern Time, Mercury perfects his adherence with Neptune while in the Cazimi degree with the sun. So that's the moment at which we see the sun and Mercury come together in the same degree, and this is the rendering of that death and rebirth thing that happens with Mercury. This is the synodic reset between them. 13 hours later at 12:44 p.m. Eastern Time, the Sun perfects its square to Mars. And 11 hours later at 11:46 p.m. Eastern Time, Mercury perfects his square to Mars. 6 hours later, by March 17th, that Friday, at 5:44 a.m. Eastern Time, Mercury perfects Cazimi and is reborn. So this is quite a powerful moment ahead for Mercury now, as he comes into this conjunction, and then all three of these planets are squaring Mars. What could you say about that? Well, one thing that you get is, if you think about Virgo, you think about Mercury's exaltation in Virgo. Virgo being an earth temple, where the rational mind is lifted up, it's celebrated and exalted. Why is that? Well, Virgo is at the end of the summer. The end of the summer is really the end of the light half of the year, the 6 months of spring and summer combined. That is where the warmth and the light that is culminating in the summertime. All of the efforts that are made during that culminative light period now come to an end, and it's Mercury's job to judge what has been done. It's looking forward to the harvest. It wants to be helpful. It wants to be sober and rational and make critical decisions about the future ahead, because the future ahead is moving into darkness. Well, the future ahead in the time of Pisces is moving into light. So Mercury's critical awareness isn't really needed. So you get the sense that Mercury going under the beams is losing himself big time in Pisces, especially conjoining with Neptune here. It's like you take an accountant, somebody who is really sober and straightforward and practical and analytical, and it's like you take them to well, like in Hawaii, we have these parties called Major Rages, like when we get these big reggae bands that come to Hawaii, maybe from Jamaica or St. Croix or something like this. In Thailand too, at what is it, Koh Phangan? I'm sure all over the world they have these full moon beach parties. Maybe you've heard about them, but you're talking about thousands of people getting together on the full moon on a beach, maybe in a place where the authorities really don't, go there. Nobody's going to get in trouble. And it is just total, hedonistic bliss. And people are big time intoxicated. It's like you take the most sober, rational, straightforward, intellectual person and you invite them to the beach party, and they become drunk and intoxicated and inebriated, and what do? They get lost. This is a moment where Mercury really gets lost. But in Mercury getting lost, what happens? He goes through the Cazimi and he's reborn. So Mercury getting lost, losing that mental quality that is very analytical, very precise, and a quality that like zooms in and dissects every little tiny detail and tries to understand it in a zoomed in way. Now it's like this loss of this analytical function provides a spiritual reset that will eventually see Mercury coming back to that rational state of mind, but with a spiritual guidance almost to it. So that's really, really fascinating. Now, this square to Mars that all three planets are making does indicate a little bit of a fanatical moment. It's almost like Mercury moves into the temple of the priest and is intoxicated, smokes a little reefer or something like this, and then all of a sudden has a revelation peering at the words in the Book of Mormon, and decides he's going to go off and be a knight for the angel Moroni. It's like it has this very, very spiritual dimension to it that is way outside of the box of Mercury. Now, Mercury is the psychopomp. Mercury is the planet that travels in and out of the underworld. So there isn't so much there isn't much that Mercury can't do. I'll put it that way. Mercury is very capable, very flexible wherever Mercury finds himself. But I think this square really indicates a moment where something happens that is very, very powerful for Mercury. The reset, the spiritual quality that is going to be guiding Mercury out of Pisces and into Aries, full on into action mode, has this kind of religious zeal to it. So that is something that is really powerful and interesting. But essentially, I think what we're getting at is that we are seeing the qualities of the rational mind. We're seeing the qualities of information go through a period where they're lost. They're somehow brought down low, completely obliterated in some kind of intoxication. And this forms a definite tension to things that may cause conflict or war or fighting or maybe just very bold and decisive action as we begin to rationally come back to ourselves as Mercury goes through that reset. So that is the next 2 weeks coming ahead. Pretty dramatic. Of course, things are going to be dramatic with Neptune and the Sun and Mercury and Saturn moving into Pisces, this big stellium making a square to Mars. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching. I hope you enjoyed this and got something useful out of this. Please give me any of your own ideas on what this could mean or interpretations or anything that you feel as this is beginning to unravel. And we'll certainly go into more of the details as this unfolds. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I'll be back soon with another astrology video. Until then, take care, everybody, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.